Okay, our final speaker, and oh my goodness, can I tell you how excited I am? Well, for all of these talks, I know I sound very gushy, but I'm very, very excited to introduce Chris Wilson, who is here from the USA. He's also on the other side of the country to me, but he is talking about an absolutely fascinating topic. Now, I'm going to say I have been watching these conversations on Twitter because Chris is going to talk about why insulin seems to work differently when my glucose levels are higher. And this is something, I've lived with diabetes for 25 years, and I have noticed that insulin seems to work differently depending on what my glucose level is. And so the fact that we have actually got a tool here that we can talk about recognizing this, I'm super interested. Chris, how are you? Thank you for joining us. How are you going?
I'm well. How are you doing, Renza?
Really, really well, but I want to go away so I can sit here and take a million notes and learn even more from you. Take it away and let's talk about what it is that you're going to share with us all today. This is so interesting.
Well, it's been a fair amount of work. Let's see. There we go. We have slides now. All right. So what I'm going to talk about here is dynamic ISF, which is both a theory and then also used to refer to an algorithm, or at least a slightly differently built algorithm that's currently being tested sort of based on that theory. But sort of at the base of all of it, and this goes back to when I first got my very first insulin pump and I was testing my blood glucose every hour. I didn't have a CGM yet, but even at that point, I had noticed that when my blood sugar was higher, it took more insulin to achieve. I didn't get the same reduction in blood sugar for every unit of insulin that I gave. And I spent years trying to track doses and build graphs and figure out exactly what was going on. But about a year and a half ago, I decided to actually see if other people were seeing this, and if so, if there was some sort of a pattern. So I've got listed on there, sort of the question that I asked of people, and I took all those answers and did some arithmetic, not math, with them to sort of figure out how blood glucose levels fit in. And it seemed very, very common in online discussions that people would say, well, yeah, when my blood sugar's higher, I need to get more and more aggressive with my dosing. But exactly how that is seemed to vary. But when I sort of normalized it all against the total daily insulin that people used, a pattern emerged. And what's sort of graphed out here is the data that I collected and then calculated. All of the blue dots are an individual and what their effective insulin sensitivity factor was that they were using for that correction dose from a particular blood glucose level. And these are all people who have over time accumulated tons of knowledge. They figured out if my blood sugar is 300, I need to give this number of units. So my blood sugar is 400, I need to give Y number of units, whatever. And so looking at sort of the underlying math, and then I fed it all into a machine learning system and then figured out what the pattern was that the machine learning system had found. And that's represented here in this the sort of red surface that you can see. And it's not exact. We know the data is going to be a little bit messy because these are all, people's estimations. This isn't, measured in a lab or anything. But sort of historical note on this, and I didn't even know this when I went into it, was that actually Diabeloop in France had noticed this phenomenon and actually included in a poster presentation that they made at the Diabetes Technology meeting in 2018, although they didn't dig into what some of the underlying patterns were. But some of what may actually be happening underneath it then was just sort of came out in something published a year ago, or I guess, well, yeah, a little over a year ago now, that when you expose tissues to more insulin, higher concentrations of insulin, they actually reduce the number of insulin receptors on the surface of the cells. So tissues sort of build up a tolerance to insulin. The more you expose them to insulin, the less responsive they become. So in order to sort of integrate this into an algorithm, what we replaced was the standard sort of insulin sensitivity factor or correction factor setting with a dynamic value that gets recalculated every single time the loop runs. It's based on a weighted average of total daily insulin. It's also based on your current blood glucose. And then there's also sort of an adjustment factor that's built in there so that people can fine tune it to work exactly for how they need it to. The current status of that, it's out there in the wild. We've got hundreds of people that are participating in online discussions and testing. There's hundreds of people signed into Discord servers getting updates on this, and most of these people are rebuilding their apps every month because their development versions, they expire. So they're putting in that effort because it's working well enough for them. There was some iterative development. Actually, the initial equation that the machine learning system came up with got adjusted based on the tester feedback. People in the doc came back and said it's a little bit too aggressive in this particular glucose range. It's not quite aggressive enough in a different one. And so we found different functions and equations that better fit what was going on. We do still have some sort of unanswered questions, especially to do with the time waiting for the total daily insulin averages. We don't know if what we're using is ideal. We don't know if this varies between individuals. The other sort of outstanding question is why this wasn't really apparent in clamp studies, which are really considered the gold standard for how we measure insulin sensitivity, at least as far as effects on glucose specifically. But we've already got people that are building new algorithms on top of this. So it's working well enough that people are clearly at that level of comfort with it. I will note that the current implementation is partial. All we're dealing with is the insulin sensitivity factor. But a lot of people that are using it have noted that it replaces at least some of the automations that they had built in. People had actually created rules in their automated insulin systems that when their blood sugar hit a certain level to switch to a different profile or to adjust a setting. And this, at least for some people, eliminates a fair number of that need for all of those different settings and rules that they had. The other thing is that the underlying theory still needs some fleshing out, assuming that we can actually establish that this is a real thing and that for some reason it's not showing up in laboratory research, then the question becomes why? What are we missing? And part of it may even result in changing the way that we think about the insulin and what its effects are and how we consider, sensitivity to it. Moving beyond just, changing the mass of glucose that's in circulation in your blood, but maybe even, integrating calories as a measure of energy. So sort of there's the what's next. It obviously needs additional testing. This is something completely new. It's a completely new concept. Not everybody agrees that it's even a real thing. But at a minimum, we need to establish that it's no worse than what's currently accepted. And we now have peer-reviewed research that says it's as good as anything commercial, which is the base OREF1 algorithm, which is in OpenAPS and Android APS. We don't have a timeline for any kind of wider release. That's going to be up to the developers. And I'm staying out of that. I'm the theory guy. And the other thing is, it's likely that this is just the first step. I can at least envision how we would bring additional dimensionality into account with this. So one step at a time. Once we've got this established and it's sort of on firm ground, we may move forward. It may fall flat. We don't know for sure yet, but it's at least looking promising. And so that's where things are right now.
Amazing. Oh my gosh. Chris, amazing. I'm just going to read a comment and then I'm going to editorialize a little bit if I can, because this is a comment that I was sitting, I mean, so many of them, but Sana, so this isn't just me. I always felt like I was the weird one. I bet that there are a lot of people who are watching this either now or they're going to play it back later, who are going to be listening to this and their minds are going to be blown, not because they've never heard of this before, but because they have experienced it but haven't been able to put it in words or haven't known how to have the conversation about it. So thank you so much for this. You know, at our ISPAD DDoc symposium last year, I think it was Tom Robinson said you should never, ever underestimate the type 1 diabetes community and what people in the community can do. And I think we are once again seeing how it is that this user-led innovation and recognition of what's going on is absolutely driving so much of what is happening and what is so real in the diabetes world. So thank you so much. Go and take a deep breath. We're going to bring you back for the panel and we've got questions that have come in, but I will say that there are so many comments saying that we're just so pleased that that this is being discussed. And just quickly, we've got a comment up here. In Pakistan, mostly people are unaware of ISF. Even they are not checking their blood glucose before meals or even twice a day. Now, you know, a lot of that could be because access obviously is an issue, but also what is the education that we're getting around this? So that's also something really interesting. But
well, and access to testing supplies.
Of course, absolute access to everything. Yes, certainly. So thank you so much. We will be bringing you back, but do follow Chris on Twitter if you're not already doing that. And if you go to Genius Glucose, you can see there's a website as well. I know that it's just there's just a little bit on there, but have a look there.